The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
Hey, what up, YouTube fam? It's Dupree, aka Darth Hater, here with some fresh, brand new Star Wars news for you. But before we get into it, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. And also don't forget to check out my last video, because it greatly helps out the channel. So let's get into it. So, details about George Lucas's unmade Star Wars Underworld series have been revealed by producer Rick McCullum. This isn't really old news, but this is more detail into what the episodes and what a lot of the story plots were going to be. So originally there were scripts for 60 episodes were completed. Episodes were dark, sexy, and more violent than any prior Star Wars project. Each episode would have had a budget over $40 million. HBO was the only company capable of distributing the project at the time. The weekend before George Lucas was set to meet with CEO Chris Alberich at Skywalker Ranch, he was arrested for assault in Las Vegas shortly after, so HBO forced him to resign. And apparently the canceled Star Wars 1313 video game project that followed Boba Fett into the underworlds of Coruscant that we all eventually got to see in Star Wars The Clone Wars was a direct tie-in to it. They also wanted John Williams to score all the episodes, but they scrapped it because it was way too expensive at the time. It would have blown up the whole Star Wars universe. Disney definitely would have offered to buy it then after. So we're gonna go over a few of these storylines that they talk about. So the first one was the Emperor Palpatine's origin. This series aimed to humanize Emperor Palpatine by exploring his early life and events that led to him embracing the dark side. This is something we've been wanting to see for years, and they've kind of talked about it. They were possibly thinking about doing an early entry in Disney Plus about Palpatine's origins. And also this kind of led into what they just did with Star Wars: The Acolyte with Darth Plagueis. So that would have been very interesting to see Palpatine's upbringings on Naboo and how he eventually turned to the dark side. And I wonder if it would have been as dark as in the Darth Plagueis book. Former LucasArts developer Corey Barlog revealed read Underworld scripts at Skywalker Ranch for episodes featuring Palpatine, where he said they made for a sympathetic figure who was wronged by his heartless woman. She's this hardcore gangster and she just totally destroyed him as a person. I almost cried while reading this. This is the Emperor, the lightning out of his fingers Emperor. That's something magical. The next is Darth Vader's mission. Writer Ronald D. Moore said Vader was going to show up for a 2-part big episode where there was big uprising happening. There was a crackdown on things that were happening on Coruscant, descending into Coruscant's lower levels to suppress a rebellion, titling his role in enforcing the Empire's dominance. Now this would have been, a very cool episode. We've always wanted to see Darth Vader in action. It's usually him sending out his troops, the stormtroopers, or him sending out Inquisitors. This is before Disney owned Lucasfilm, but before Dave Filoni helped create the Inquisitors that we eventually see in Star Wars Rebels. So we would have seen a more hands-on Darth Vader. It says he's hunting down a rebellion, which most likely was headed up by a Jedi. And we've always wanted to see Darth Vader just go up against a random Jedi and, show us the real dark times. Like, we've always been told about the dark times in media, Vader hunting down Jedi and him being the most efficient Jedi hunter in the history. So this would have been cool to see. Another storyline would have been Boba Fett's storyline. Boba Fett was set to have a significant presence delving into exploits within the criminal underworld. So basically, this would have been the Book of Boba Fett before the Book of Boba Fett. Everybody would want to see Boba Fett before Return of the Jedi, before he fell into the Starlight Pit. Maybe this is how Boba Fett ended up working for Jabba the Hutt. The fourth would have been Han Solo and Lando Calrissian's backstory. The series intended to showcase pivotal moments between Han Solo and Lando Calrissian, including how Han won the Millennium Falcon in his first meeting with Chewbacca. So basically, this would have been Solo a Star Wars story before Solo a Star Wars story. And I'm interested to see how George Lucas's take, without any other source, would have gone through this. The fifth one would have been a Rogue One connection. The storyline of the film Rogue One focused on the Rebel Alliance's mission to steal the Death Star plans, was ultimately conceived as an episode for the Underworld. So basically this was just Rogue One, just more streamlined. I'm sure all the characters that we know from all that, like Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor, weren't there. But still, like I said, I would have wanted to see George Lucas's take on this. And then the sixth series, The Exploration of Coruscant's Underworld. The series was set to delve into the criminal and political power struggles within Coruscant's underworld during the Empire's rise. So this basically sounds like what's happening with Andor. We're seeing, the political side of what's happening in the background. Rick McCullum also said that they were trying to get a $40 million pilot greenlit first by HBO, but the weekend before George Lucas was going up to meet their CEO in San Francisco, he ended up getting arrested and let go by HBO. So that's why all the plans fell through. But at the end of the day, it sounds like just how George Lucas likes to push the limits of technology. The goal of every episode was to feel feature length. And you have to also remember, every episode would have been $40 million, and this was 20 years ago. At that time, that was unheard of. And it's funny because HBO would only commit to 2 of the 5 seasons up front, renewing it if it was successful. After Rome's failure, they didn't want to take such a big risk. Lucas insisted all or nothing, so we got nothing. But then you have multiple actors from the film had expressed interest in reprising their roles, such as Jeremy Bulloch, who was Boba Fett, Jay Nagala as Gregor Typho, Daniel Logan as young Boba Fett, Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca, Ian McDermott as the Emperor. On the other hand, however, Billy D. Williams refused to reprise his role as Lando Calrissian. And then in the culmination, years later, George Lucas will go on in an interview and say, "It sits on the shelf. We have 50 hours. We're trying to figure out a different way of making movies. We're looking for different technology that we can use, that we can make it economically feasible to shoot the show. Right now, it looks like the Star Wars features, but we have to figure out how to make it about a tenth of the cost of the features because it's television. We continue to work towards that. We will get there at some point. It's just a very difficult process. Obviously, when we do figure this problem out, it will dramatically affect features because feature films are costing between 250 to 350 million. When we figure this out, they will be able to make a feature film for 50 million. Wow, reading all this, it was interesting. I heard about this around 2013 when George Lucas actually eventually sold Lucasfilm to Disney. At the time, I remember everybody was thinking that they will use these scripts. We had all heard that George Lucas was penning episode 7 and giving a treatment for his sequels, but they also had this. And it's funny because reading all these and some of the scripts, you can see that Disney did in fact use some of these storylines and plots for a lot of the Disney Plus shows in bits and pieces, because there was a clause when Lucas sold his company to Disney that they had to pay him so and so amount for every character that they used in any of their stories. So I think that's why Disney wanted to lean towards not using Lucas's characters, as they would have to pay him more, which is why you get a lot of new characters instead of the reuse of older classic George Lucas's IP characters. I feel like we might eventually get something like this later down the line, but things might have been a lot different if they actually ended up using George Lucas's scripts. This was all the work right here laid out for them. They could have followed it and we could have got a very different Disney Star Wars, but I get it. I understand from both sides why they had to do what they had to do. And hearing all this now, just thinking about this 20 years ago, like we would have gotten so much Star Wars, and maybe this would have kept George Lucas from selling Lucasfilm to Disney. Maybe he would have just kept his company, especially if this had been a success on HBO. But at the time, Star Wars was finished. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, it was supposed to be done. We were getting Clone Wars, and that was kind of it. Any new upbringing of any Star Wars content would have been a huge hit. So I think they gravely underestimated the market. On top of the fact that the producer that George Lucas talked to got arrested. Yeah, it was all kind of doomed. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you think about all these scripts and all these potential storylines we could have had with Star Wars Underworld? Also, do you think we'll get any of this future Star Wars content? I do feel like a lot of this could be used. A lot of this was already in Andor. What they're saying about Palpatine, I would love to see that. I would love to see how he started. And anything with Darth Vader, you already know I'm on board. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And as always, if you guys like this video, please hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications for all my latest videos. That would be great. Anyway, guys, take care. See you in the next one. May the Force be with you. Bye.